You guys saw it in the intro. I promised it. Today we're talking about how I built my sim racing rig. We're going to get into the details of it. Now, I've gone pretty deep down the rabbit hole. This is my third rig, and each time I try to make it more and more immersive. And a lot of people tend to ask why I haven't just gone with a VR headset. And there's two reasons for that. One, I enjoy making YouTube videos and doing other social media stuff that just wouldn't work with a VR headset. It's not very entertaining to watch somebody in a sim racing rig with goggles on. So, in order to keep that part entertaining, I want to make sure the rig looks good. Also, I live in Las Vegas. Throughout the month of July, it was 115 degrees several times throughout the month. Keeping the house cool enough to not melt in a helmet would be absolutely miserable. So, for that reason, I keep the rig open. I run a triple screen. And to be honest, I just enjoy trying to figure out how to make the triple screen system look really immersive. So that's what I've done so far, and that's what I'm going to share with you guys. Now, on the front side, being totally transparent, there is an enclosure around the rig that's made out of cardboard. It looks really ghetto. Later on, I'm going to refer to it as a total dumpster fire. You'll see what I mean. And that was more of a mock up so that I could build the rest of the interior. I'm still trying to decide what the permanent enclosure is going to be that's going to look right in my room. Because as it sits right now, I'm working on a gaming slash racing slash YouTube studio in here. And all that cardboard just definitely does not make the room look good. But for right now, I'm going to share the whole thing with you. It's going to ruin a little bit of the magic, but you guys will see like what you can get by with and how good it really looks on the inside, despite how it doesn't look so great from the outside. Anyway, so let's jump in the rig and check it out. Well, by no means would I claim to have the most complex rig on the planet or the coolest rig. It's definitely more unique than a decent majority of rigs out there. And I've done some little quirks and things that make it just a little bit different than some of the other ones out there. And basically, you can't just jump in here and hit the red button. Don't touch my red button. So, a lot of this is kind of handmade or crafted in certain ways. You'll notice is there's a lot of build out in the dash. Everything up here on the dash outside of the steering wheel itself that you can see is pretty much custom made. Lap timer gives me data from the lap. It'll also do tire pressure, deltas, basically any information I want to get from SimHub. That way I can keep that off. It's a little more immersive, especially in a race. I don't typically have anything up on the screen for the most part. Here lately, because I'm still working through my sound card and stuff, I still keep my frames per second up on the screen. Anyways, so that's the lap timer. I did take ABS plastic. I've formed it to make a basically a dashboard here, kind of a little bit of a runoff. So it's wrapped in some carbon fiber wrap with, this is actually felt from a drawer, like what you would normally put in the bottom of a drawer. But I wanted it to have some depth to it. I wanted it to be able to reflect my ambient lighting as I'm driving around the track and kind of present that like brightness and that light. So some custom work went into that just to make sure that it did everything I wanted it to do. The first one I did was very flat. It just sat up against the screen and it was like flat back there. And when I got my first look at it, I'm just like, man, that doesn't feel like there was a, I don't know, it just didn't feel exciting to me. So, and I also had it wrapped in the more matted carbon, and it just kind of disappeared, especially on camera. It really disappeared. So I wanted something that popped a little more for me, for you guys. I do have an air vent installed that needs a little bit of tweaking, and I need to put a fan on it. Have not gotten to that yet, but ultimately, in this room, this rig just gets really, really hot. So having a fan, I did upgrade my computer fan. That helped a little bit because now my processor stays a ton cooler. I was able to overclock and still stay like 50 degrees Celsius. So shout out to a buddy of mine for the recommendation. The button box, which is also a custom built button box. So it is fully lit. I've got a couple switches for the lights. This light in particular, I use just to indicate that my car is in qualifying settings. That way, like when I switch it over, I turn that on And I know, and it hopefully will help me remember, so far it hasn't failed yet, to swap my settings back to race mode so that my gas is right and I don't end up starting a race with a couple gallons of gas in the car. I've got different layout for buttons. I mean, some of this controls, like I said, the heads up display. This one controls my digital information over here. One for the wipers, obviously, another one for the quick wipe. Brake bias up and down over here. One will turn on my deltas. I mean, I don't even remember what all these buttons do, to be honest with you, but I got plenty of buttons if I need them. And then down below that, you'll notice this little macro controller. Only purpose for the macro controller is to communicate with crew chief. If I need some information, I've programmed 6 bits of information that I typically want to know from the crew chief and a volume button, and I can just reach over and hit those. And they're kind of, it's one of those things where when I'm watching on screen, I can kind of just feel for it, and I don't have to look up because of how these buttons feel. I know where I'm at with the buttons, and I can just ask the questions. So macro controller, definitely a good way to control your crew chief. You probably notice this janky safety net with a little Sparko thing on it. This is actually custom made. Depending on what camera angle you see it at, there's still safety pins in it. I haven't even gotten around to sewing it yet, but I've been enjoying driving the car and the immersiveness. And of course, like I said, also ambient lighting built into the top of it. There are some things that I'm going to change with it, but first off, I guess now it's time to push my red button. I did turn off all the lights, wanted to give you guys a little more of a feel for the rig itself. So hopefully I got the track lighting right. We'll do a lap and see if we can't get some shadows. A little more lighting effect going here. So these lights, anybody's been looking into the Philips Hue, you know, Philips Hue lighting's about $150. And now people have some issues with it here and there. But overall, usually the standard for sim racing ambient lighting. But this particular ambient lighting, if you guys didn't see the video last week where I showed you how to do it, only cost me about $22. And in my opinion, works really well. I still have some tweaks that I want to make to it. Might change them out for some matrix because I'm using LED strips right now. Kind of see if the more compiled clusters have a bigger impact. But you're going to notice as I start to drop down this hill here, I'm going to get some shadowing and it's going to start to get real dark in here. Which is what makes this so cool is that you get more light in the cabin and then you're going to see it really start to diminish as I get into these shadows. And we'll pull back out here. And of course, the hill's blocking some of the light. And we make our way out into the middle here. Get a nice bright cockpit. So with the sun going down, it's not too bright. And that's the nice thing about using SimHub. It's very detailed in what it detects. And I get a good mix of, it's bright outside, so it's bright in here. It's dark outside, it's dark in here. So yeah, definitely dig the ambient lighting. But let's jump out of the rig. I'll give you guys a little tour out from outside. This is the part I really don't like. I'm actually ashamed to show this, but I want you guys to see how the magic's made and hear what I'm going to do differently. All right, so we're going to do a little view change here, and I kind of want to do it all in one motion so you can be astounded at how great it looks right now and how horrible it actually looks from the outside of the rig. As you can see, most of the rig is surrounded by project board right now, and it's basically just a bunch of black cardboard that makes that scene look dark. And from the inside, I absolutely love it. From the outside, that is an absolute dumpster fire on its best day. Now, if I'm being honest, I'm starting to feel really good about the vibes in this room and like some of the ways things are coming together. And that cardboard's just absolutely killing it for me. Like the rig could have been without anything on it, and this room would have popped already. Like I would have had a pretty sick gaming room slash racing room. And I don't really like this closed concept at the top from a room aesthetic standpoint. And for me, like I'm big on aesthetics. I want things to look a certain way, and it's just not cutting it for me. But outside of that, like I said, I'm super stoked with the rest of the rig. I'm going back and forth on making some modifications on a on the button box. Part of me is kind of leaning towards leaving it just the way it is because even though I have tons of buttons and I've got these really sick billet steel and like all this stuff that would look amazing on it, right now it's kind of raw. It's race car, and that's kind of the feel I want from this thing is a more raw race car feel. So what I might do is build the button box because I have an extra case for it. I might just build a really sick button box and then give it to one of you guys. So if you guys are following the channel and you want to see me build a sick button box and gift it to somebody, maybe one of you, uh, make sure you're following the channel. So that does it for the rig build. You guys kind of see where everything's at right now. The next step is, like I said, to get that enclosure buttoned up. Maybe in the meantime, do a button box. And I've still got to do some upgrades with the hardware. Definitely a lot of modifications to come, so make sure you guys follow the channel. And I'll see you guys next week.